Why do we become fit? Why don't we just live comfortably, eat whatever we want, enjoy our life, and then the end will come at some point? And that's the thought that many have. How do you convince people that becoming fit is an essential part of a human being's entity as an entity?
As a fit person, you have a bigger ability to enjoy life, a better ability and a complete different experience for the time that we are on this planet. And I can tell you that because I've been on the two sides of the equation. Being fitter allows you to find more joy, provide more joy, and potentially live longer as well.
Diego Carrete is the Chief Wellness Officer at First Abu Dhabi Bank, the UAE's largest financial institution. He's also the founder of the Lean Executive, a lifestyle consultancy. With over a decade in entrepreneurship and wellness consulting, Diego blends business acumen with a passion for fitness to help senior executives achieve peak health and performance. Diego holds a BBA from Paris and also from Florida. He's a certified fitness professional, nutritionist, and sports nutritionist recognized by the UAE government with a golden visa. As a writer and speaker, he's been featured in top wellness publications, aiming to shape smarter health strategies for executives and organizations. At FAB, Diego builds a culture of long-term health and productivity, creating an environment where employees thrive. Through the Lean Executive, he provides science-backed strategies tailored to busy executives focusing on sustainable health improvements without sacrificing demanding lifestyles. Diego has faced personal health challenges, including an eating disorder, which fuels his commitment to evidence-based wellness solutions. Right, Diego, welcome to Second Opinion, and thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule and coming to us today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always good to get a second opinion. So, yeah.
And it's good to be with a wellness officer. I mean, we're going to come to that very soon. But before we get into your expertise, which is just fascinating, let's talk about your personal journey. I know from a little bit of research that we did was that you had an eating disorder and you had a relationship with fitness from childhood, which has changed or evolved over time. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was an inflection point, or basically sort of the epiphany, right, of my life. So I've been training or involved into fitness since a very young age.
How old, if I may ask?
14.
14 years of age, okay.
Mm-hmm. And after that, basically I've tried and tested pretty much everything that you see online nowadays. And in 2015, well, things sort of hit rock bottom, and I've been through that episode that pretty much compromised my health, right? I lost the possibility of becoming a father, so I went through all that whirlwind. And the good news is that now I'm here. I'm, let's say, recovered. I have a very flexible lifestyle and an approach to nutrition, thanks to my wife, amongst doctors, etc. And yeah, life is good. I'm blessed with 2 kids.
But what was the main driver? I mean, was it this event that happened in 2015 that made you choose a career in wellness completely?
See, that's a very good question. I always loved fitness, although I also have a peculiar background when it comes to my academics. My dad worked very hard to send me to different universities worldwide, and I have a strong academic background.
Yeah.
So the preconception was that, okay, are you going to become a trainer or a fitness trainer and going to wellness? That was not very well perceived, right, back then, or at least from my family side. So I was always hesitant to fully dedicate myself to wellness. It was not the trigger point, that event. It was more of the natural evolution of my life.
Got it. So just a fundamental question that every person asks himself or herself: why do we become fit? Why don't we just live comfortably, eat whatever we want, enjoy our life, and then the end will come at some point? And that's the thought that many have. You earn money, you eat, you enjoy your life, and don't think about reaching a particular goal like a weight or a fat measurement and all that. How do you convince people that becoming fit is an essential part of a human being's entity, as an entity, basically?
Well, you mentioned the word joy.
Joy, yes.
As a fit person, you have a bigger ability to enjoy life, a better ability, and a complete different experience for the time that we are on this planet. It's a complete different thing, and I can tell you that because I've been on the two sides of the equation.
Yeah.
So being fitter allows you to find more joy, provide more joy, and potentially live longer as well. Longer and better.
So when you work with executives, which you do, I'm sure you have a lot of clients who are high network individuals who probably have a 12-hour job in a day. How do you motivate them to think about their health or their fitness? And they're probably in their late 40s, maybe early 50s. And that's the most difficult part, isn't it? They've probably gone through more than half their life journey. Maybe they were not that interested in fitness to begin with, but when you reach out to them, how do you motivate them to take that up?
It's not an easy task.
I'm sure.
Future pacing plays a key role when it comes to understanding two things: the cost of delay and the cost of inaction. The moment we become aware of those two costs, we are more likely to make the right decisions because we understand how things are trending and what will happen if we continue down a certain road. So those two are important concepts that I bring to their attention when I start working with them.
So cost of inaction, just tell me about that. What is the cost of inaction? How would you convince me that there is a cost to inaction?
Okay, so if you continue with your current eating habits, lifestyle habits, exercise habits, how do you think you will live in 20 years down the line? How do you think life will pan out?
Probably be obese. I might not have any physical activity. I'll be probably very sedentary. And because I have a family history of heart diseases, I might suffer from that myself.
If you were to continue with your current lifestyle, nutrition, exercise habits, how is that going to look like in 20 years?
I mean, in my case, I have a family history of heart disease, for example. So I'm expecting that, yes, that's a possibility. I might put on more weight. My lifestyle might be more sedentary. I might not be physically as active as probably what I am now because my eating habit is not the best anyways. And if I don't do anything about it, maybe I'll be in a worse state of health in 20 years' time than what I am now. So.
And are you happy? Are you content with that?
I'm not. But for me, starting is not a problem. I might start doing a diet or a fitness regime, but sustaining is a problem all the time.
All right. So you lack motivation, or you lack motivation to continue.
Yeah, if that's what you call it, evasion.
You start with good intentions, but then as you progress, you sort of lose interest, correct?
Correct, yes.
And what do you think that is?
Prioritizing, maybe. Maybe I don't see a positive effect in the first or second week, and I don't give it enough time to start showing an effect on my body. Okay. So the motivator is not there.
So let me give you another example. You are my stock advisor,
okay.
And I came to you consulting because I want to improve my returns when it comes to the operations there. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I am investing X amount a month and I'm seeing a crazy return every month,
yes.
Do you think in 6 months' time, if I continue seeing this positive return, will I still be motivated to trust in you with your advice and with my money or not?
Yeah, of course you will be.
Exactly,
yes.
Because I have clarity, because I'm tracking data and results, and I'm seeing a positive trend.
Correct.
Now, in my experience, when people lack motivation, it's because they are not tracking the right things, or they're basically shooting in the dark. They are not having a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
So they don't know if things are going to work out or not.
So probably there are more metrics, you mean. For example, for me, I'm looking in the mirror, I'm thinking, oh, it's been 2 weeks, nothing has changed, or my weight, nothing has gone down. These are two metrics we look at as a layperson. But as a wellness officer, obviously, you'll have a number of metrics that you would make sure your client looks at, isn't it?
You need to look at trend lines and not headlines, first of all. You need to give yourself sufficient time horizon. And second of all, you cannot just look at your weight. You need to look at your waist measurements. You need to look at your inflammation. You need to look at your energy levels. You need to look at your sleep. There are certain metrics that we are not taking into account that they do play a role. So that lack of attention to a holistic picture, plus the lack of clarity and the lack of strategy, is what drives people into losing motivation, in my experience.
Chief Wellness Officer, not many know. And you are a Chief Wellness Officer, probably few that are there in this part of the world.
Yeah.
What's your job? And you work for FAB, I can say that. You work for one of the largest banks in the country. What is your role as a CWO?
Is to strategically embed wellness into the culture of organization and ensure that employees are productive and performing at their best whilst being healthy inside and outside the office walls. So it's not easy to describe. It's very strategic work because you need to leverage certain data in order to make decisions, but it goes far from just doing a couple of classes or a couple of seminars.
But do you collect data from your employees? I mean, there are thousands, I'm sure, with FAB. What do you do?
There is certain data. For as much as I can disclose, we have different surveys that they collect subjective data. Then we have insurance data. And based on that, we understand the priorities for the organization and its demographics.
Yeah, but it's mainly education as well, right? Within your organization, to educate people.
Absolutely. It's to educate, I consider myself an enabler.
Yes.
So I give you the tools and resources that you need to take care of your health and the ones around you.
So in Dubai, I mean, 8 months, we cannot step out of the house. So it's pretty hot. Going out and working out is very difficult. People tend to stay in, they go to a gym maybe, or a fitness center, or somewhere there is group work going on. Give me some tips how we can maintain optimal health staying indoors.
Indoors?
Yes.
Well, there is an abundance of malls in the city where you can walk around, but fundamentally, I would ask you to step outdoors and leverage early mornings and late evenings to basically get your work done. And I'm sure in a few years we will be talking about a complete different, ball game with all the advancements that the country and the city is doing when it comes to enabling this type of thing. So morning and evening and indoors, whether that's group classes, whether that's staying active. I go to Nahil Mall a lot,
maybe just to walk.
We will walk. We just of course it can get boring and it's better to do outdoors, but I leverage mornings and evenings a lot during those hot periods.
I'm going to ask you a very interesting question. Lately in India, there was a reel that went really viral of a high network individual who is one of the richest persons in the country. His name is Mr. Narayan Murthy. He started Infosys, which is one of the biggest companies in India. And he said that when they were debating work-life balance, and he said, this thing about work-life balance, working 48 hours a week, is just nonsense. I work 72 hours a week and I'm healthy as a fiddle. And the reason he told that, he said, because if you go to work and you're not stressed in those 48 hours or 70 hours, whatever hours you spend in work, then it's not work. Because what kills you is the stress that you take. You might be more stressed at home with your wife and kids in a very bad environment than at home. So then working 80 hours or 90 hours a week, the hours don't matter. It's how you feel about
and it's the outcome. Ultimately, we want outcomes, right?
Yes.
It comes with my team. It's like most of the time, it's like I spend X amount of time doing that. What is the outcome? Right? Because at the end of the day, I was explaining this to you before we started the discussion, understanding your peak productivity window that I do for myself with the support of a sleep coach, understanding my hormone cycles, so I can understand what is my flow time during the day. And I had to start doing that because of my PhD, as I shared with you, right? So I need to understand where can I get the most leverage?
Yes.
Where can I get more outcome out of the same input? That's leverage. Yeah. So by understanding my peak productivity window, I know when I have to allocate the deep work, which is the work that is going to eventually move the needle. Yeah.
But if you have an employee sitting in your office who's working out of hours, so he's supposed to go home at 5, he's 7 p.m, he's still working, Would you stop him from doing that? I know it's a debatable question.
Yeah, it depends actually on what he is actually doing, right? Because
He's working, so he's on a computer doing his...
well, it's seasonal. Sometimes you get periods where I need to work, 12, 14 hours a day, and there is times where I can work 6 to 8 hours a day. Even on those times that I work longer than I should, I acknowledge that I need to reduce my work time because I cannot get past, I would say, 10 Pomodoro blocks. You know the Pomodoro technique?
Yes.
I cannot get past 10, 25-minute blocks and actually make it count.
But personally, do you count your hours? Do you say, okay, this week I've worked X number of hours, I took X number of... Do you do that?
Not really.
Okay, because I don't. For me, work diffuses into my lifestyle.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Or the blessing in disguise.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, myself and my family, we are integrated into our business and what I do for a living.
Yeah.
We are all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So,
but the key is, are you happiest when you're working?
I'm happiest when I'm working, but I'm happier when I'm sharing the outcomes of my work with my family.
Yeah.
Because from our work, because I call my wife not only the CFO, and it's also the CEO of my company, but she's my emotional manager. Without her, I wouldn't be able to do what I do because my job, both of my jobs, are more relation dependent. I'm in the relationship business. I always say that because it's how you deal with people, how you communicate, how do you adapt, how do you apply the strategy. Even if I would be the smartest scientist in the room, if I don't have those 2-3 skills and I'm not able to manage my emotions, I wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah. People think that fitness means intense workout, sweating out, going and lifting weights, running for 10 kilometers. What are some simple, effective exercises people can do to improve their health? Just give me, for a 50-year-old, what are the tips you would give to say, okay, you don't have to get into a gym and do all this because you're busy. What can that person do to imbibe within their lifestyle to improve their health?
Number one, daily movement.
Daily movement, okay.
Are you moving enough?
I bought a standing desk.
Well, that's a great, but let me tell you, like my mentor, Olivier Girard, and my good friend says, people say that sitting is the new smoking, and he says that standing is the old cholera. He makes that joke. Why? Because if you are holding
your body posture,
a disadvantageous posture or like not balanced posture, standing is pretty much like sitting in the sense of if you do it wrong, it's going to be equally wrong. So he advises to stand and sit, and he has very specific guidance and directions on how you should set up your workspace and the ergonomics of your office in order to be healthy. But standing desk is a great addition. I have one too. Walk sufficiently, do some sort of mobility work on a daily basis.
So I read. So I'm sorry, I'm keeping you interrupting you, Diego, so that I understand how I can incorporate into my life. So I read from books, and I've always been. I don't read from iPads or Kindles. I take a book and I walk around, and then suddenly I realize I've taken 1,000 steps.
That's brilliant.
Within the house. So that's one thing I do. If that's something.
That's brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, and you will realize that you are more agile mentally and cognitively when you are moving, right? Your blood is flowing.
Quicker.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a big advocate of walking meetings. Because of, you can see this from, I'm sure you can see this from, I haven't seen any research by Microsoft like they did for the back-to-back meetings scenario, but I'm sure your cognitive abilities and your mental activity sort of increases when you are walking because the blood is flowing.
How do you do walking meetings?
Think of the best ideas that you ever had. What is the outcome that you expect from it? You expect positive outcome that is different from what you are currently doing, right?
Yes.
You expect a new outcome. And chances are that the outcome, it must be fueled by creativity, right? And you are most creative when you are in an environment that allows you to be creative. Screen time does not equal productivity. Screen time does not equal, at least for me, the best ideas, they occurred to me when I was at the beach, I don't suggest everyone to go to the beach, by the way, instead of going to work, but being in an outdoor environment whilst discussing business or initiatives can lead to better outcomes than glued into an office. That's my honest opinion.
So using smartwatches, which reminds you that you're sitting too long and setting them, would that help for people who have a desk job?
Yeah, it definitely. Or you can just set an alarm. You don't even have to get into watches. You can set an alarm and get the habit of every 20 minutes standing up, pacing around, and
Try that.
Yeah.
Diego, you're in Dubai. We are in Dubai, so we can't complete this podcast without asking about food.
Yeah.
So tell me how food and diet contributes to overall health. It's a very generic, simple question, but what's your answer for it?
My answer is that fuel has different sort of roles in our lives, right? The main one should be, and I shouldn't even use the word should, but to fuel our bodies, right? But to me, it's also, to many, enjoyment, social. So there has to be a balance, right? Fundamentally, I advise on having basically 80% one ingredient healthy foods that are rich in nutrients, and then leaving 20% for sort of whatever.
80-20 rule.
80-20.
And you're talking about the entire 24-hour period, what you
Yes,
consume.
on a daily basis, for sure. And my approach to food is that you must like it. You don't want to enter a nutrition approach for a short period of time or with a deadline in place, because if it has a deadline, it's probably going to have an expiration date as well.
Yeah, and it should be a part of your lifestyle, isn't it? You have to build up so that 20% can be a burger?
Yeah, burger inherently is not bad itself, is it? It's just meat.
Yeah.
You know, if you use good oils like olive oil, or if you use, good bread is awesome. I eat bread daily, So it's not a matter of only what you eat, is what you digest and assimilate, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of people that eat in front of their screens, or eat when they are distracted, or eat when they are stressed. Your body is not going to assimilate nutrients in the same way.
I'm going to ask you a question about how executives look at this. So if I'm working 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day, if I want to cut down on my intake, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, I'm going to eat once a day. So they either go on to intermittent fasting, or they decide to have only a dinner at, say, 7, 8 p.m. and do intermittent fasting for the rest of the time. What's your take on that?
My take is quite radical when it comes to eating once a day, because I've been there, I've done that. It is not advisable from a personal perspective, but also from a scientific perspective, because as we age, metabolism goes down, muscle mass goes down, and our ability to synthesize protein decreases as well, right? So when you're eating once a day, you are asking your body to, the amount of protein that it has to consume for muscle maintenance or for muscle growth is done in one sitting. But there is a maximum threshold that there is a cap in terms of how much protein you can assimilate. So you should have at least 3 intakes. Otherwise, you are just going to expel that extra protein from your body. It's not only how much protein you eat, is what is the frequency? Are you able to absorb, digest, and assimilate that protein? And once a day, if someone like yourself has 150 grams of protein a day in one intake, that's impossible. It's going to make you feel sick. It's going to make you feel nauseous.
But I would argue with that, if you allow me, because many dietitians, nutritionists would argue this way, that we are inherently hunters. And when we used to hunt, thousands of years ago, as we came about, we used to hunt once and we used to eat once a day. Some days we were not hunting anything, we didn't have food. So we were supposed to starve, and your fat was supposed to be utilized. That's why you have adipose tissue and fat storage to utilize it with time. We don't utilize that function now because we have food everywhere. So eating 3 times is a modern myth, many say. What's your take on that?
I haven't thought about that. No one ever asked me that question. But the first thing that came to my mind is, what was the average lifespan of
cavemen? We don't know, right? We didn't have epidemiology at that point of time.
So my understanding is that as we evolve, we also change our ability to deal with current circumstances.
And a longer lifespan. Now we are living longer, obviously.
I mean, I would say, 20, like, there were no antibiotics back then.
Of course. That has changed everything dramatically.
20 years, 25, 20, 30, maybe I'm saying something that is not realistic, but I would say,
Okay.
So I think it's not apples to apples in that respect.
I saw one of your YouTube shorts, and I want to talk about that. You said you can lose 2 to 4 pounds a week. This sounds too good to be true. Can you break that process?
2 to 4 pounds a week.
Yes.
Of body weight.
Yes.
Of weight.
Yes.
If we look at an average sustainable calorie deficit, which is 500 calories a day, 3,500 a week, that's 1 pound. That's 1 pound of fat, right away. Now, the moment that you subtract, for instance, excess carbohydrates from your body, every gram of carbohydrates has every molecule of carbohydrates has 3 molecules of water. So every time that you cut carbohydrates, you're going to inevitably flush out water.
Yeah.
If you increase your water intake and reduce sodium, you're also going to. So that lifestyle change is going to help you release weight, not only coming from fat, but also coming from glycogen and also coming from water weight.
Many athletes do that, right? I mean, weightlifters and boxers, for example, acutely, if they have something coming up over a week, they shed a lot of pounds, I think. And
they do, especially in martial arts world that I follow religiously. And it's not the healthiest. And actually what I observe is that comeback or that reload after cutting the weight is not always optimal, and you see how that affects performance.
Yeah. If you ask any person in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, everybody wants to be healthy. Of course, they want to be. But the problem everybody faces is self-discipline. What's your mantra? How do you get your executives or your clients to say, use this method to build your discipline in your endeavor to achieve what you're set to achieve?
Yeah. Discipline is lousy tactic in the sense of relying on discipline is not as effective as creating a framework that works for you.
Okay.
So remember when we discussed about subtracting, right?
Taking out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take out what doesn't serve you. Identify what's your MVD, minimum viable dose, and stick to that long enough to see results. Because if you can integrate that into your life, it's much more sustainable than if you are trying to rely on discipline.
Yeah.
Because discipline.
But Diego, I have to
fluctuate.
argue that, saying that, look, we always fight between happiness and the lifestyle goals. For example, if I drink alcohol, imagine. I don't, but if I'm drinking alcohol, and that makes me happy in the evening when I have a glass of alcohol. Now you are asking me to take that out of my system, but then I would lose that element of happiness or those 30 minutes I spend with my alcohol. And that's where you need discipline to say, you have to give away this so that you can achieve your goal. You need that discipline there, right? To cut something like this.
That's correct, but we are creatures of habit. And I believe, as someone who used to drink alcohol, that you haven't given yourself the chance of trying alternatives. Because if I ask you to go to the sauna or do contrast therapy, you, with sufficient time horizon, would replace that with alcohol. And no one is asking you to remove alcohol from your life, but you can try and apply moderation. I think that whoever, and again, it's a strong take on this one, but I've been on the two sides of the coin. Whoever did not or does not reduce alcohol intake is because they didn't give themselves the chance to basically live without it for long enough.
Because I always tell my, like some of the colleagues that I have, is that building habits is easy, breaking them is difficult, that you've built over years. So, and especially this holds good for people who smoke or who have alcohol, because you've built it over years. Now you're breaking that habit. That needs more sustained kind of attention for you to voluntarily do it. It will not just happen, because that addiction will drive you to go and search for it. But it's up to you to say, okay, I'm not going to do it positively. So you have to keep telling yourself that I did this for 10 years, today I'm not going to do it.
when you're trying to, sorry to cut you, when you're trying to remove a so-called
habit.
bad habit,
Yeah.
you subtract it, you eliminate it, or you try to eliminate it, correct?
Yes.
Have you tried to replace it? One of my mentors, Bob Proctor, rest in peace, he taught me an exercise, which is the replacement exercise between PAs, productive actions, and NPAs, non-productive actions. So he was a fond believer that habits, you must replace them. You must break them down and then replace them to make it sustainable.
Give me an example. So if I have an employee who every 2 hours gets out of the office and smokes for 10 minutes, and that gives him that dopamine release and that relaxation, as they would say, what can he replace that with?
You can replace it with tea. You have tea, you have decaf coffee, you can even have dark chocolate, still better than a cigarette. 3 walks around the building, deep breathing, shoulder mobility, neck mobility. It's just finding something that replaces that. Replacing is a better way to go forward rather than subtracting, in my experience.
Now, an individual by name Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know of him. And recently he was in India and he was on a podcast and he walked midway through that. I don't know whether you saw that. So he said the API, the air purity index was not sufficient for him. It was too impure. So he left out between the podcast. Now, you know what he does, right? He spends billions of dollars on longevity. He wants to not die, and he calls it not die. What's his goal? Not die. And he takes supplements, he has his own monitoring system, and he wants to live as long as he can or not die. And he's propagating this to a lot of people as well. He's not saying go and do what I'm doing, but he's doing an experiment, a chronic experiment on himself.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? An extreme level of
I think extremes are not good, nor sustainable. I think he's doing a great work when it comes to supporting science and supporting us understanding best practices for those who want to live longer. I don't think we should not die. I think we should. I think it's part of life, and I think that life would lose its essence if we would live forever.
Immortality, as they say.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think certain cultures normalize death, and I think others don't. And my mom, since a very young age, she's been insisting on this is a part of life, right? So having said that, I think that someone should have asked him, are you happy?
Yeah.
Because if he's happy, great, it makes sense to try to extend
as long as you,
but if you're not happy, a lot of people want to live longer, but they're not healthy for longer. Have you ever heard of the marginal decade?
No.
Another concept by Peter Attia.
Yeah.
One of the best longevity experts in the world. The marginal decade is, you don't know when you enter it, by the way, and it's your last decade of life, right? So most of us, they spend that decade either suffering or battling disease.
Yes.
So he explains how to make those 10 years the best years of your life.
How do you know that? You never know when you reach your marginal decade.
No one knows.
Yeah.
But he is an advocate of acting early, just precisely because you don't know when that. You remember the cost of inaction and the cost of delay?
Yes.
Just because you don't know when that decade is, you always.
You just think it's 10 years from now.
Yeah, and he puts the example of the Titanic, you know. He mentions that we all have our own icebergs. So the captain of the Titanic, he saw the iceberg, right? He just couldn't maneuver and divert on time.
He saw it too late.
Exactly.
Obviously. Yeah.
And that's what happens in modern society. We wait until it's too late to act. That's why.
So you see your iceberg early and you expect your iceberg to come.
First of all, you know your iceberg. You know family history. You understand where that iceberg might be located. Is it a little bit to the east, west, north, south? And then you can plan ahead, act early to mitigate or to delay, right?
Yeah.
And that's
a good idea, a concept to have.
It's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
He has changed my life as someone who I studied from. And this, honestly, I hope it helps others.
This is an era of social media nutrition. If you go today on Instagram or Facebook, you would see hundreds of these so-called nutrition gurus putting out, and they are conflicting sometimes. Fat is good for you, fat is not bad, is bad. Avocado is good, avocado is bad. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there. Where do you suggest your client or someone you're advising on to go and get this information from?
Where? Not to Instagram.
Okay.
So you need to understand every social media and take it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to TikTok to find
Or I should
nutrition.
eat.
I would go to find entertainment, but I don't even go there because I find other ways to entertain myself. But you are primarily in the wrong platform to learn. I would go to YouTube, long-form content, evidence-based content, but not to short-form, snappy content
To look for it.
to trigger your dopamine and make you feel,
Okay. I'm going to talk to you about the trends that are happening now. So the weight loss drugs that have of spread out throughout the city, and because people can afford them, it's easy, it's gives you a result, people just go for it. I'm sure there is a negative side effect to it at some point, if not now, a few years down the line. So let's not take the names, but at least there are 3 or 4 different brands that people can choose from. What's your take on that? And these are anti-diabetic medications anyway. So tell me, and how?
From my humble experience dealing with clients that
Use them.
Yes. Well, you must use them for the right reasons. A lot of people use them as a shortcut.
Okay.
Then they mismanage that shortcut. When you take those drugs, they suppress your appetite. We discussed protein before. You're going to, most of the times, undereat. You're going to be protein deficient, you're going to be nutrient deficient. So what's going to happen? You're going to lose a lot of muscle mass in the process. Your metabolism is going to slow down because you're going to be losing muscle mass. And also your metabolism is going to adapt. Because as we discussed in this podcast, survival is our ultimate goal. So when you give your body less energy that it needs to function, it optimizes its own internal processes because we want to survive. We want to preserve energy. So your metabolism is going to, let's say, shrink, right? It's called metabolic adaptation. It's what happens when you diet. Now, you are burning less calories at rest, you have lost a bunch of muscle, and you lost a bunch of weight. But you probably look at yourself in the mirror, you don't look lean, athletic, even healthy. Because during that process, you have followed the wrong strategy. And the question is, what was the goal in the first place? Was it weight loss? Or should have it been health optimization?
So can that be used as a kickstart? For example, someone is obese and they're saying, okay, let me get 15 kgs down and then I'll change my lifestyle. Can it be used for that?
I don't think it works like that. I think you should have a plan during that process and you must have an exit strategy. Because when you finish, you must have an exit strategy, the same when dieting. Don't mention any brand, but a lot of people regain the weight.
Because when they stop it.
Yeah, because they don't have an exit strategy, because they are left with a very adapted metabolism with no muscle mass, and that appetite suppressor has vanished from their system, so they have that willingness to eat again, to eat things that they haven't eaten before, and they don't have the capacity to...
So if you're using them, you always advocate to build your muscle mass, to keep your protein intake going.
Strength train, sufficient protein, sufficient meal frequency, sufficient daily activity, sufficient sleep, and use it as a support mechanism.
Got it.
Not as an excuse to misbehave.
Food labels. It's become a trend now. So people go into a supermarket, they pick up a bottle of processed food or whatever it may be, a spice, and they look at the food label. And of course, there are 20 different labels, components out there. A layperson cannot make heads or tails out of that. What do you do when you go to the supermarket? You look at the labels?
I think of my grandma.
Oh, you don't?
I think of my grandma.
Who shops for you, by the way? Who shops your food?
Myself.
And your wife contributes to that as well?
Of course. But I think of my grandma because I think if she wouldn't recognize the ingredient list, I wouldn't buy it.
Okay.
If my grandma wouldn't recognize this food, I'm not going to eat it. Or at least I'm going to allocate it within that 20%,
Right.
right? And that's how I use God bless my grandma, rest in peace. I think of her, like, would she recognize this food?
Yeah.
And then if she wouldn't, then I already know that it should go into that bucket. Is that I'm gonna eat it, but in moderation, and it's going to account for that 20%.
So a bag of chips or a bag of nuts, you picked it up, and of course there are preservatives, there are additional coloring, whatever it may be. Would you get put off by that and not purchase that? Or you would use that as your 20%?
I would use it as my 20%.
20%. In moderation.
In moderation, even on a daily basis, I have it, right? I'm not, by all means, there was a point where I used to wait all my food for years. I used to walk around at 6% body fat year round.
What's your body fat now?
I think it's around 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
I don't measure it, I just,
Yeah.
I'm very active.
I've seen your photos. You have you're actually lean, obviously lean to
Some
an
of them
extent.
might be outdated, by the way. No, but yeah, I keep myself in shape,
Yeah.
but I live a complete different lifestyle.
Yeah. How old are you, Diego, if I may ask?
I'm 30, almost 37. I'm 36.
Wow, okay. I would advise my audiences to go and have a look on your social media. And even if it's few years, this thing, and the kind of lean muscle mass that you've built, I haven't seen your recent photos, but it's quite impressive.
Well, I am at my lightest because I'm more active and I prioritize functionality over aesthetics. I started training because of the aesthetics. I was bullied at school. I was picked on at school. And
you were picked up because you were thin.
Yes, absolutely. I was probably this height, 195 centimeters at 16 years of age.
Okay.
Right? So I didn't like that one bit, and I started training 2-3 times a day for years. I probably done, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in the training room. And now I'm at my lightest, and I go to the gym twice a week. The rest is just martial arts or swimming.
What do you do? What martial arts?
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So I'm a somehow beginner, right? I train almost daily, but I've been doing that martial art because it allows me to be focused in the moment if you don't want to get hit in the face.
But if you as you get older, weight is another issue, your metabolism slows down, but you lose flexibility. How do you keep up with that? I mean, for Muay Thai, something like that, you need flexibility.
Every day I do mobility and flexibility. I think is very important, and
not just strength training, but also flexibility.
Fundamentally, flexibility and increase your range of motion. When you increase your range of motion, you're going to have more chances to build muscle.
Yes.
You have more surface area to work on. So your ability to build muscle will depend on your range of motion, fundamentally, right? So I'm able to train less, train better, get pretty much the same results with 2 hours a week. And from an agility perspective, nowhere near in my 20s, I couldn't, reach my toes, and now
And who tells you what to do for your flexibility?
Well,
I mean, you're a trainer, of course.
I had a mobility coach. Okay. I'm a corrective exercise specialist, so I know a thing or two.
Okay.
But yeah, I basically try to counter the effects of sitting, right? Because I sit a lot, right? So I know I'm going to have to work on, hip flexibility because I sit a lot. I know I'm going to have to stretch my hamstrings. Yeah. When you sit, a lot of muscles, they get weak and they are dormant and they get tight. So it's about strengthening and stretching those specific muscles.
Yeah, tell me about it. What's your take on detox diet and cleanses? This fad is going on that you can go and get detox diets and be a new human being.
I think people don't know that actually our liver does that for us, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, I think the detox, I don't believe in that. I don't believe you need a detox because detox to me sounds like it's going to be something abrupt, extreme, and it's like, I don't believe one bit.
Right, Diego, we have a rapid fire section. So you don't get much time to answer. I throw either a choice at you, you give me what's your choice, and then maybe in a sentence tell me why. Okay? It's like a Viva exam. I don't know whether you've given one, but in our medical school, we had to sit in front of an examiner, and they will throw questions at us and we have to answer very quickly.
That happens with my wife sometimes, but not in medical school.
All our wives, not just yours, I can tell you that. So let's start with this. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
And why?
I don't like tea.
Okay, but as a fitness guru and as a wellness coach, you have to have a better answer. Why do you choose coffee?
Why coffee? I get more bang for my buck.
Okay.
That would be
Is that more bank is caffeine?
Yeah, more banking answer, but yeah.
Morning workout or evening workout?
Morning.
Why?
Momentum. It builds momentum.
For the rest of the day?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe evening workout is not good because it builds up adrenaline and doesn't let
100%.
you sleep. And, okay.
You're going against your sleep hormones.
Okay. Weightlifting or cardio?
Both, but weightlifting cannot be avoided and shouldn't be avoided.
Okay. If I'm 65 years old, should I lift weight?
100%.
Okay. Strength training is important even at that age.
Yes. Use machines, not so much free weights, but yes.
What's that one thing that people would be surprised to know about you, which you haven't spoken about?
I've been in the cover of Men's Health.
You've been on cover of Men's Health?
And Men's Fitness. 6 times.
Please send that out. I'm going to put this on this show.
No, my wife says, why don't you talk about it more? It's like, because that was me at one point.
How many years back was this?
Actually, my last cover was in 2022.
Men's Health UAE?
Men's Fitness. Men's Health UAE was 2017.
Okay. So we need to take both those images. We need to put this on the show.
There's 6.
Okay.
You can go, well, not now, but to Waitrose and see the
copies?
The magazine. Yeah.
No, I would rather you send us those pictures.
I'll definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm with a celebrity here now. Okay, what's the one habit you would like to break of yours? Do tell me there's nothing. I'm sure you are a human being.
100%. I see respecting my work blocks, because I start one thing, then I start another one. Execution must be improved. As an ADHD,
Yeah, that's my side of things that you're coming up with.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
If you could change one thing about your daily routine, what would that be?
Maybe it's not daily, but yeah, Netflix.
You watch a lot of, you consume it daily?
With my wife, maybe half an hour. At 9:30 I'm in bed, but half an hour we like to watch. Yeah.
Well, that's not a bad habit,
It's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
I don't snooze.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be one. Yeah.
Okay. What about your go-to healthy snack? So you're watching Netflix, you want something.
Cottage cheese. I have some quinoa chips, by the way.
Quinoa chips, okay.
Yeah, they are, I don't know, it's something about snacking that,
Okay.
you know.
And how do you handle cheat meals or indulges? Like
Yeah.
you're in an office, someone brings something that you love and it's out of your meal times. What do you do with that?
See, my strategy is pretty simple. I eat 3 times a day, 1, 4, and 7.
Okay.
Right? I would call them treat meals, not cheat meals. They can happen every day to me. I just decide not to. How do I handle them? What's my
Okay, let me ask you this question again. So 7 is your last meal, right? At 9 o'clock you're out, not partying, gone to a friend's house. I'm sure you might be late night sometimes.
Yeah.
And they offer you this fantastic, say, try this, Diego.
I would say,
What would you say? You say no?
I would definitely have it. You know, the thing is that I know that if I apply this 80-20, I can have it tomorrow too.
Okay. Got it. So
Yeah.
you compensate for something that you've had that evening.
I don't like the word compensation. You know why?
Yeah.
Because it triggers a punishment reward mentality that I was deep into back in the day. So I just understand that it's weekly, it's not daily, it's the long term, it's the,
Yeah. Eating late at night. Many people, or most of the people in Dubai do that. 10, 11, even 12. I know some of my colleagues who eat late. Is that probably one of the worst things to do for your body?
It depends. It depends. I eat late at night. My last meal is 2 hours and a half before bed, and it's normally full of carbohydrates.
But that's 7 you're talking about. 7, 8 p.m.?
7:30.
Yeah, but that's not late. Come on, in my books, that's not late. I'm talking about people at 11:30 and then they go to bed at 12.
I think there should be certain amount of time that you leave between your last meal and bed, because your body needs to get ready to rest, not to digest.
Yeah.
But having said that, just control that meal. And even if it's carbohydrates, people think they cannot have carbohydrates before bed. Carbohydrates actually, they contain an amino acid called tryptophan. It's a melatonin precursor. It's going to help you sleep better. Right? So it's about how and how much, not always about...
What's that one food you can't live without? You talk...
Sweet potato fries, steak.
Sweet potato fried steak, the entire dish, right? You cook that?
Eat it off.
Do you make it at home or you go out for it?
We go for steak.
Okay. Now, if you could only work on one project for the rest of your life, What would that be?
New Me.
Okay. New Me is a project.
It's our wellness brand at Fab.
Great. And what can we expect? Is it out already or?
It's our wellness brand internally at Fab.
Okay.
New Me. By the way, if you see the logo, it stands for nutrition, lifestyle, mental health, ergonomics, and exercise. So it's an acronym.
New Me.
And it, New Me, like you're new.
You're new, basically.
Yeah. So that's a project that is very close to my heart. Yeah, that would be it, I think.
Great. Diego, thank you so much. It was almost an hour, a successful one.
Thank you so much.
And we learned a lot from you today. Thank you.